So when we've asked before about how control and influence, so we've asked, do we have any control over what happens to us in life? And the answer's been mostly a no. It's that we have influence but not real control. So is this, whether or not, is this the influence that we have, whether or not, when the soul is present in identity, and in what way does it control? How does it control the body consciousness and the script, all of that? What control? How does it control it?
Very good question, thank you. The soul itself is not a controlling force. It is an awareness of that is the controlling force, and a moderator of that is the controlling force. And it chooses through every single movie script what is to be arranged in the coming events to allow the awareness to rise even further, to allow the understanding of how to control the identity within a moving, scripted movie. In reality, we are not the physical body, as explained. When the identity is believed as the physical body, it is believed that there is control by the self as physical body. That is illusion. There is no control of the physical body as an identity by the identity as yourself. It is the body consciousness that entirely is responsible for the body movement. However, as the awareness rises beyond the body and the mind is negotiated with in reality for higher awareness of identity, then the body consciousness with mind becomes a mind-body identity. In that identity as mind-body, the mind itself has an ego attachment which controls what is and what is not experienced through thought form. That is not the identity either, but in that belief of that being identity, the understanding is that the mind as an identity controls everything within the scripted movie. That is somewhat truth, but not entirely true. In higher awareness of identity as the observer of the scripted movie, truth begins to appear in a paradoxical sense of the real progress of identity. The real understanding of identity begins. In that awareness, the body begins to respond more to the soul and the soul identity, because the identity has been realized. The scripted movie no longer controls all that occurs. The mind itself, no longer believed in as identity, begins to open the doors to what is truth in higher awareness of identity. And therefore the mind becomes a platform for understanding control, understanding true training of the mind in terms of identity, understanding that the identity is not the mind, but the mind is a tool to be programmed for specific creative experience. And in conscious creation, we become something very different to the non-conscious experience of creation that we are, as we are the body in identity and belief, or the mind-body in identity and belief.
Okay, I remember in the first week we had the presence of the slain rapper Nipsey Hussle, and he said that he was preparing to work as a soul. He was preparing to experience the physical as a soul, influencing decisions through Christ consciousness, or words to that effect. As a soul working through physical bodies, influencing decisions with Christ consciousness. Is that what we're talking about here?
It is exactly what we are communicating about. The particular aspect of identity that you are referring to has obviously been very good in his life and understood good as being something higher in awareness that has evolved in spirit to the point of love beyond all limit and recognising true identity. There is no bad in not understanding that and not being that. It is simply a journey of soul through many lifetimes. And as the good rises from within in a question mark of identity, the Christ conscious being becomes apparent, and there is no return from that moment that the true identity of self has been realised. For the mind body cannot hold the soul any further in illusion once the Christ conscious being has been accessed as physical, and in that respect revelation has started to occur. There are many beings upon this planetary system that are now preparing exactly as that person in identity did and released himself into the Christ conscious being. They are doing so for purpose of greater awareness beyond the human identity which is currently manifest. And when the world as a platform has reached the Christ conscious being as identity in all areas of life, in all countries, in all different aspects of self in soul projection, we will begin with the universal school of creation, which means that the planet becomes a platform for conscious creation as opposed to non-conscious creation. This is evolution of the human species, which is inevitable.
So I have a question. When somebody reaches that point of what Laura said, what you just said, Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
What does it look like? How would we recognise somebody who's reached that? Or the way you said it, whatever the point of revelation. I got the impression that they kind of do the, what Jesus did, the ascension into heaven. Do you get a gold flame above your head and just rise up into the sky? What happens? How can you how would we know if we were in the room with somebody, presuming they stay in the room and they haven't floated off into the sky?
Can I just say that when it comes to the rapper Nipsey Hussle, he was a Crip. He was a gang member in America. So you've got the Crips and the Bloods. So he was a gang member on one side and had performed many tasks, but he was actually unifying the Crips and the Bloods. He was also talking a lot about manifesting. He talks a lot about, spirit and coming to an understanding of yourself. A lot of the interviews that he did on the radio were talking about the kind of stuff that we speak about.
Right.
When I first came aware of him, he's called Nipsey Hussle, and I'm known to many people as Dipsy. So I was like, well, who is this Nipsey? And I listened to an interview and I was like, I can't believe he's actually saying what he's saying. And I just, at that point, my first thought was, I wonder how long he's going to be on Earth. Once he passed, everybody recognises that he was working on a higher level. In a way, those who are aware of him recognise that he was working on a higher level. And some people have said maybe he was Christ. Other people say no way, because of the acts that he may have performed whilst being part of the gang.
Yeah.
A perfect example of what we were communicating about earlier. Here we have a Christ conscious awareness in identity being presented upon the planetary system with a physical body in non-conscious behaviour, behaving according to the soul contract that is the performance of consciousness through the physical body and mind in conjunction, that can be therefore judged. There is no difference between a person in the non-conscious state of ignorance doing one particular thing and a person of non-conscious state in ignorance doing anything else, however the mind would judge, for that is the consciousness in creation in polarity. When the identity rises beyond that non-conscious into the conscious identity, the identity has truly begun. And there is a paradoxical arrangement between the mind body and the Christ conscious, which many that have not experienced would not understand, for it takes experience to understand at any level. And of course, as frequently mentioned, understanding is a transient state. It is only a arrangement of time and space in experience that allows understanding to grow. As more experience is delivered of the Christ conscious being, the release of past understanding is given in the gain of further understanding, and so forth. Once any person in this world stands and says, I understand, they have immediately limited themselves to the non-conscious state that is ignorant of mind, for understanding in exploration terms in space and time can only ever be given within the intellectual mind. Beyond that, we are identities of great expansive understanding in the shared space of mind, in the wisdom and knowledge that is gifted to all equally, beyond the intellectual drip feed that we believe we are in the mind body state.
So what happens when you reach that Christ consciousness?
Life begins, life happens, and the true state of beingness begins.
So how would I recognise somebody who has reached that?
You yourself are already experiencing certain aspects of identity that are aware of the Christ conscious being. That simply continues to grow from within, and the identity transitions in awareness to higher life, higher awareness, higher conscious creation. It is not a transition that occurs overnight, for the shock, if you like, to the system would be too intense. It is more that the gradual awareness of identity is revealed. In the understanding of illusion, we can provide all that you are not. However, in the truth of who you are, the explanation is not something that can be intellectually understood.